Well, that was the longest minute in the world. Hello, welcome to this hybrid closed loop TA 1 year on webinar from the DSN Forum. I would just like to welcome everybody that's on our panel. So my name is Amanda. I am the lead nurse for East Kent Hospitals. We also have one of our other DSN Forum directors, Beth Kelly. Beth, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Beth Kelly. I am the lead community diabetes specialist nurse in Wiltshire, so I work in the community.
And Tamsin?
Hi, I'm Tamsin Fletcher-Sol, and I'm the lead diabetes specialist nurse at the Royal State University Hospital.
And also one of our DSM Forum directors.
Yeah.
And then we have somebody that probably doesn't need any introduction at all, Professor Partha. Partha?
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for the invite.
You're welcome. And I don't think Nikki's here yet, is she?
No, can't.
No, so we'll speak to Nikki when she arrives, but Nikki is our Abbott representative. And then we have Elise Quarrington. Elise, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I am Elise. I work closely as an ambassador for Abbott and I am type 1 diabetic.
Thank you for coming. So this webinar is sponsored by Abbott UK, but Abbott have had no input into its content. So this is our agenda. So we've done our welcome and introductions. We're going to talk about the journey so far. So how has the nice hybrid closed loop technology appraisal come to light? And then what recent advances have we had in hybrid closed technology in the last 6 months? Then we're going to talk about navigating the rollout. And I think this is probably where most people will have most of their questions this evening. So do put them in the Q&A box. And then 1940, we're going to talk about our challenges and solutions. And this is when we really, really want you to add those Q&As into the Q&A box. And then our final thoughts and our close. So we'll get started.
Nikki's arrived.
Hey, let's go back then. Hang on.
Didn't know if Nikki, if you wanted to introduce yourself and just say hello.
My apologies for being late. I was actually running another webinar and we had a little bit of a technical issue. Glad to see you not, so I'm slightly stressed, but over it now. Thank you for hosting this absolutely wonderful event. I'm Nikki Copeland. I'm Marketing Relationship Manager for the UK and Ireland for Abbott Diabetes Care, and I'm delighted to have actually been asked to support the event because I think there's a lot happening in this space and you've got great speakers and things as well. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for coming. Okay, right. So hybrid closed loop TA 1 year on, so the journey so far. So Beth and Tamsin, do you want to kind of talk about what we've seen so far?
It's not really it's not quite been a year, has it? It's been
10 months.
Yeah.
10 months, yeah. So we're nearly approaching a year. I think we've had quite a few documents and things out, which Partha will probably be able to run through, and hopefully, those are dripping out. 2 teams now, stating a few things. I think Tamsin, you could probably talk us through those because you've been working on them, haven't you, with the...
Yeah, I mean, it's been, well, it was the 1st of April, wasn't it, that it sort of officially went live in a sense from the kind of reimbursement point of view. So obviously the TA came out
December.
and then from the 1st of April, that's where all the sort of reimbursement side of things happens. And obviously teams have had to submit their data from that 1st of April to the National Diabetes Audit to get a baseline figures. And I think, as I said, Partha will probably be able to go through this in a bit more detail, but I think we haven't quite got the baseline figures that we kind of wanted in a sense. So we may need to be getting that information from teams and things like that to get a bit more information about what their baseline was before we started rolling out the hybrid closed loop systems. And then obviously teams have had to submit, or they will have to submit quarterly now to the NDA, and that is how their funding is calculated retrospectively. And I think we're still, personally, I think we're still in that really early phase, aren't we? I still think there's a lot of kind of uncertainty from teams at the moment. I think ICBs are still kind of catching up, aren't they? They haven't really maybe been as prepared as they should have been. So I think I know from speaking to other teams in the Midlands particularly, that some teams are still quite far behind, other teams are like racing ahead. So I think there's still quite a bit of variability, but it's really early days, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah. It feels like really, really early days. Like, you know, we're nowhere near. If you think we've got 5 years to do this, I don't think we have jumped as far ahead as I thought we would want to be by now in the first sort of 10 months, because it's been a really slow progress for us, certainly because of funding issues and that kind of stuff. So Partha, have you got anything to add about the journey so far? How hard was it to get this nice TA approved in the first place?
I think before going on to that, I think first of all, the NICE TA was released on the 19th of December, 2023. I remember that forevermore because it was sandwiched between my 50th birthday, which was on the 20th of December, and sadly my mum passing away, which was on the 18th of December. So that was my it will forever, those 3 days will probably be forever etched in my memory because of the highs and lows of it all. How are we doing? Actually, we are ahead of trajectory because I think people get snippets, and you'll always really hear, of course, the not so good news. So just for all the listeners, as of data this morning, we have just crossed 50% of all children being on HCL in this country.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's, so I think it also opens up a different debate about the way pediatricians work compared to adults, because pediatricians' attitude towards doing things are very different to adults. I think there are different ways. I think they've also had a head start, it's fair to say, because of their best practice tariff. They've got more people on pumps. It's easier to switch. Upgrades are easier. And I think going back to the question that Amanda asked, it's never easy, these things. But I think doing the closed loop pilots were very important. I think it's been a long strategy. And I think you also have to show to people concerned in Department of Health that you can succeed in a certain project, which was the journey we had with Libra and then CGM. And so this has been a natural progression. And what I always say is that if you now go to any international conference, we are way ahead of the curve across, compared to any country. So that's good. So I suspect by next year, end of next year, I suspect we'll have 85% of kids on it. So I've already joked with pediatricians as to what on earth are you going to do after that? So I think adult teams are at different stages, I would say. That's fine. And I think just to wrap that question up, we could have brought more money into the picture this year. We deliberately made a call of going low year one because we knew this would crop up what has cropped up. Because the worst thing that could have happened to us was we had the money, and as you all know, we can't roll money over, and then we'd have lost the money. So we have deliberately gone low in year one. I think year two fundings or indications should be released very shortly, and I think that should come as a pleasant surprise based on all the negotiations we have completed with the new Department of Health team. So yeah, I think that's been the journey so far. But I think the major bit has been to try to smooth out the process, as I think Beth or Tamsin mentioned, is what's the process? How do you get the money back? What's the supply chain? What's the pricing of the new the new technology? So I think all of that, and I think it's important people find their time. And we'll talk about to make it very simple as to how to navigate the rollout. But that's the journey so far. I personally, I am actually, because I've lived the journey with Libra in 2017, and it's fantastic journey through the phantasm, so to speak. My reading of it is I think we're ahead of schedule compared to where we need to be.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly felt when we got told, so where I work, we were told, this is your budget for year one. We were all like, oh, we were ready to go and had loads to do. But actually looking at the budget we were given, we thought, oh, we can't actually do as many as we'd kind of thought and planned. So I don't know if you found the same, Tamsin, but that makes sense. We've got a lot of people to train up.
But And I think the reason for that, Beth, is very honestly, if you look at areas like, as you'd expect, Leicester and Derby, they have overshot their allocated budgets. But there are regions whereby the total number of upgrades and the total number of new starts they've done since April is 0.
Yeah.
So now they're at the risk of not being able to actually use the money we have given them, which is so that's, and we deliberately want to have a bit more of a level playing field, get them up to scratch, and then sort of run with it next year. So that's fine.
And I think we, the sort of advice and in a sense and guidance has been is to try and get those people that are already on pumps moved over, haven't they, to HCL. And actually, because of the supply chain negotiations, in theory, you put somebody on a HCL, you actually save money. It doesn't actually cost you more money, which I think was a big worry, wasn't it? I think that suddenly you were going to add in CGMs and it was going to cost more money, but actually because of those negotiations, we're now in fact saving money by putting people on HCL that were just on pump alone prior to this.
Yeah, and you're probably going to find a host of that. You're probably going to find your finance teams actually, I mean, the irony will be the next few weeks that your finance team will be chasing yourselves up saying, have you done it? Because they want to save the money now. So they will be chasing you to make sure you've done all your upgrades. So that will be the funny bit, which is probably coming through in the next month or so. So yeah, that's also good news. So that's where we're at.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to recent advances. So this is going to make my eyes go funny. So I'm going to switch back to the thing. Woo! So there have been loads of advances, haven't there, even in the last 6 months. We've seen more connectivity. We've seen Libra 2 Plus connecting to the Omnipod. We've seen, the Simplera for the Medtronic. We've seen all sorts of new stuff. And we were recently at EASD, and we can see that there's even more stuff coming, more kind of like smaller pumps, potentially pumps that have dual drugs in them like glucagon and insulin. The prototype that I saw at ASD is about this big at the moment with 2 cannulas and 2 sensors. So I don't think that's coming anytime soon, but it was really exciting to see it there. So yeah, I think it's a really fast moving pace. Are we going to keep up with the fast pace of the technology?
The big question is, can we update our chart fast enough? I think
yeah,
we end up doing that every other week at the moment, don't we?
we do indeed. Yeah, lots of advances. So I think definitely lots to learn, and that's the issue, isn't it? We've got nurses who we're training in pumps and things, but then things change all the time. I think our crib sheet is making things easier for people to know. I gave it to my consultant today, was in antenatal clinic, and the Ipso pump's quite new to us because we've just taken over the antenatal service, and so knowing what you can change, what you can't change, all of that kind of stuff is really important to know, because there's just so many pumps out there, and they all have slight differences, all have slight changes that you can make to certain things that make things slightly different, and there's certain things you can't change on some pumps, like target for some of them are stuck at a certain target, or insulin duration of action is stuck at a certain target. So it's really, really good that we've got so much choice, and I'm really glad that pretty much every single pump that we know of is available for us to use in this hybrid closed loop technology appraisal. So that was really good that you managed to do that, Partha, and get everybody's agreement that they would sort their prices out so that we could have everything. I think we're really, really lucky in this country to have all of that.
No, I mean, that is the job, as I always say, and I think it's taken us a long time to get there, which is why the delay as well. But I think, as I kept on saying to industries, that we need to get everybody at the table. And I think that's important. And I do thank industry colleagues for also playing their part. So they've all done their adjustments so that we're here again. We didn't want to get to a position where we say, right, we've got 4 pumps, but not the other 3. And, I've always believed that we should be, as a NHS, that's always been my belief, offering people the best thing that's available. And you mentioned about the progression. So now you are seeing actually that the UK has been chosen as a market to launch products, which was unheard of ever. So we have had the Omni 5, we have had the Libra 3, all of these, Simplera, all of these coming into the UK market much, much earlier, which is a natural progression, because industry can also see that it's a place where people are using the product. So I think that's been very good in the advanced sector. I think the next phase of work would be if we can get the data to talk to each other, make life simpler for all of us. I think that's going to be a big piece of work, which those of you not aware, Mark Atkin has joined as the National Specialty Advisor. I've sort of dropped most of my role to just focus into the delivery of this, which I'll bid adieu. But Mark Atkins, one of his main roles will be in the data interoperability. This morning we had a fabulous meeting with all industry in London. All the companies came. We talked about the importance of data interoperability. We talked about the next stages of what it would mean to education, onboarding, and the points you made. How do you keep people more updated with all the changes that's happening? So, and I think it puts us in a really good space to, whatever the next changes are, whether it be a fully closed loop, whether it be, you mentioned the beta bionics and all that, the double chamber and all that. So whenever they come, so the thing is, the reason pediatrics are so quick to get onto the hybrid closed loop is because they're better trained. Now, that doesn't mean that adults have been sitting here twiddling their thumbs. And to everybody who comes in and any parents, etc., I think it's important to understand that adult teams have the pressures of also looking after the pregnancy and the dialysis and the foot and the inpatient and the general medicine. So it makes it much more trickier to sort of, because it's one part of our job, not the only part of our job, so to speak. So slightly different planet, slightly different climate. But I think adults are picking up. I think the CGM exercises told people the importance of learning about technology. And as the GERFT work that's going on, the getting it right first time, where we do those challenges to every center. So I think advances are very good. I think I always say, and I think one of the important things, and I think this is a message which I want to leave for everybody, and I think it's perspective is important. We shouldn't forget that. And I say this is, the DSN Forum team, you guys have been to areas where the world is a different place. You were all there. I've been to India. We are right now in a health system whereby I would say the NHS probably isn't doing great in lots of areas. You try and get an appointment with your GP, try and go to A&E if you ever have to see what happens. In that climate, at the moment, you are in a country whereby there are people who are born and unfortunately will be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes subsequently, and they will never know what is to prick their fingers or to inject themselves with insulin. And that is a phenomenal place to be in. So these children will never know what it is, and that's right. So steady as she goes is what I would say. I always say steady as she goes. And those of you who have been on the journey with me in 2017-18 will remember the journey. Memory is very short. I appreciate that the NHS, and sometimes we're a little bit like, okay, we're getting everything. Can we get the next thing? So, this will happen. I think 26. I think I predict by the middle of 2026 or the December 2026, I think this will become standard care. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I think healthcare professionals are realizing that if they don't start learning about pumps and about technology, they're going to get left behind, because soon we will live in a world where people with type 1 diabetes, this is the standard of care, like it is to have a Libra now, like it is to have a CGM. People will have a pump.
Yep.
Hopefully.
Yep.
There is a question. So we brought up in our podcast just this week about the contract. Well, potentially, I don't know if it's a contract or something, but Virgin have committed to kind of giving phones to children. I know that probably came from, there was a slightly odd opinion from, was it an education minister or someone that said children shouldn't have phones in schools? And so you kind of went about getting that looked into. So we didn't know, someone's asked that question actually, what's the situation with phones for those that are paid maybe from deprived areas, groups, etc., that don't have smartphones?
So there's a commitment from the then Labour opposition, now in government, that they would provide phones to children, anybody who's from the deprived population. We are working on some ideas and stuff around pregnancy, because I think there's much more. There are certain things you can only use. So what do you do if you don't have the right phone? So we should be able to reveal that reasonably soon. And I think we are pretty confident we should be able to close that gap. So no,
Yeah.
I think that those news should be coming out soon.
And there are 2 pumps now that you can use without a phone. So you can use the T-Slim with the Dexcom, you can use the Omnipod 5 with the Libre 2 Plus. So that's, you've got a patch pump and you've got a tethered pump, which do not need a phone to use. So I think that's a move forward as well.
Yeah, and Medtronic you only need a phone if you want to constantly upload as well, don't you? You can actually upload manually through a laptop as well, so you can use Medtronic as well. So
yeah, so
have
they've
that
all
option
got,
as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
getting better.
Yeah,
definitely getting better.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we go on to? Oh, sorry, go on then.
No, sorry, I just wanted to say, Partha,
You've gone on mute.
You've cut yourself out.
Just at the right moment, your question disappeared.
Happens to the best of us. Oh, you're still gone.
Go on then.
No, you're gonna have to hold it because I'm gonna move pages now. We're a bit ahead of time, but I think that's good because we're gonna have lots of time for Q&A, and there will be probably thousands of Q&A. So we shall talk about our patient case studies. So Elise, would you like to talk about your experiences of tech?
Yeah, so I guess I'm in a bit of a unique situation where I've been on the Omnipod 5 with the Libre 2 Plus closed loop, and then I became pregnant and they moved me over to the Ipso pump. And I originally, I really wanted to be on a pump, and the only non-wired option was the Omnipod 5. And because I'm so sporty and I just really wanted the non-wired option, to be honest. It kind of made more sense with my lifestyle. But now being pregnant, my range has to be so much tighter. And with the Omnipod 5, you can't put the target low enough. So they recommended that I moved over to the Ipso pump, and I now achieve 75 to 80% in the pregnancy range, which I thought was going to be pretty much impossible.
That's hard work. Well done.
Really hard work. Well done. That is so tough. They're so tight. The pregnancy ranges, for those of you that don't know, is 3.5 to 7.8. So it's like almost not having diabetes, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so tight.
Like, that's just not doable. But I think the pregnancy nausea has definitely helped put me off some food. So
Oh, bless you. That's good. So I guess some questions that we thought might be helpful, because obviously our main audience tonight will be DSNs, and I wondered if you could talk about maybe the jump from, I know you said you had type 1 diabetes before you used a pump, didn't you? So you started on injections. So maybe talk about the jump from injections to pump. Did you find that quite difficult? Because obviously at the moment DSNs are busy trying to get as many people as possible as we can, but that also comes with the capacity of the team to be able to do all the education and stuff that comes with that. Did you feel that you had enough education, or could you talk about what education you did have, and was that substantial enough, that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I came from I recently moved to Devon in the midst of trying to get onto a pump, so I'd jumped through all of the hoops back at my old
and started again.
And then they told me that I then didn't qualify for a pump where I was, which was quite difficult to hear because I'd jumped through all of the hoops, and I was getting onto a pump back at my old hospital. So I did do I have done 2 pump courses now and a carb counting course, and I think the education around that was so important. Like, I'm quite tech savvy, but I think without those online pump courses face to face, I think it would have been quite difficult to start the pump. And going from injections to the pump was definitely a bigger transition than going from pump to closed loop system. I think learning to trust a pump was the biggest thing for me. That was quite difficult because you kind of it almost takes away that control that you have with pens. And you've just got to trust that it kind of is learning your system and it knows what it's doing, which I think for a lot of people is quite hard. And before I'd started on a pump, I think it was quite daunting because I'd heard, I don't, whether they're rumours or not, that if your pump fails, then you can be in trouble because you might not notice. But now with the Libre 2 Plus or the Libre 3, I have real trust in its accurate readings, and I know if something did go wrong with my pump, then I'd be alerted. And I've always been like, we live in an age where we have to be open to new technology, and we're so lucky to have this technology, and especially going from finger pricking and injecting now through to pretty much, it's not needleless, but it's almost there, compared to how much you were having to do before. I think it's all going in a positive direction.
Yeah, that's really good. And how much kind of education so you said you did an online course, is that all you did? Did you have much face-to-face kind of contact with the DSN and things?
Well, I'd moved down to Devon, and then because they told me that I couldn't get onto a pump down here, I managed to transfer my care back to my original hospital after a bit of time down here in Devon. And so everything was pretty much virtual. They managed to do everything virtually, which is great. So I had like Zoom call lessons, and they were, I think for the Omnipod, there was 1 or 2 other people on the Zoom call. And then for the Ipso pump, it was just me and the instructor for a few hours over Zoom.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I think it's good we've got those kind of options now with online, and some people still do face-to-face, and I suppose it's just a lot of people will say that the online version, that they want to do that and it's fine, and then we come across actually that's not enough for some people, and they do need a lot more support. And like you said, that jump from injections, or MDI as DSNs might call it, to pumps is actually a lot bigger than people might be anticipating, and then they need a lot more DSN support, which I suppose is partly why DSNs are always saying we're trying as hard as we can to get as many people on hybrid closed loop as we can, but we have this we do have waiting lists, and we do have backlogs because people do need a lot of support around starting them. So yeah, I don't know.
I think it depends what your challenge is as well. Like for me, I think learning the technology I wasn't really worried about that. I think I kind of thought, I'll be able to pick that up quite quickly. It was more learning to trust the pump was my issue. So I felt like, doing it over Zoom would be enough for me. And it was. And I think, then the first few pump changes are always a bit like, oh, am I pressing the right buttons? But
yeah, absolutely. That's great. So how far gone are you now?
13 weeks, so literally just left thank goodness.
The fun parts. Amanda's just started doing antenatal clinics, so she's loving it.
Yeah, that was very quick, getting you onto that Ipso pump. Or did they do that in like preconception?
It was no, it was pretty much kind of just about as I became pregnant. It was rapid. They literally got me on straight away, and I transferred my care closer to home now, because I didn't want to be going every 3 weeks for scans back, driving 3.5 hours.
Have you found the control better now with that? Because that's the one licensed in pregnancy, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think her being able to target a lower level, it's very similar kind of use, I feel, with like doing exercise and putting on the boost or ease off option, things like that. Like I think that's quite similar to the Omnipod. It is, obviously it's wired, so it's a bit frustrating especially when you forget that you're attached to it or something. But that's a tiny thing to complain about, considering it's gotten me in such good range. And
do you think you'll go back to the patch after, or?
I think so, purely for the ease of not having wires. And I swim a lot, and I know you can leave it on you whilst you swim, but I've not found a comfy position to kind of stuff it in my swimsuit. So I unattach myself for the hour, and then obviously just have to kind of manage that. Whereas with the Omnipod, I could leave it on. So there's benefits to both, I guess, isn't there? It's just I felt like it would be safer to be on Ipso pump through pregnancy, even if it's temporary.
Yeah, it is the only one licensed, so that we would there's two pumps, one algorithm, so it's CAM APS is the algorithm, so there's 2 pumps that you could potentially be on. But yeah, I totally agree. It's when you've got used to something. I had a lady today, she's used to wearing the Omnipod, and now she's got this Ipso pump, which is doing her control wonders, but she keeps dropping it and it rip out the cannula and stuff. And it's just it's getting used to it. It's not a whole new getting used to.
And I'd only started on Omnipod I wasn't on it for that long before I then went to Ipso pump. So it was quite like, remembering, telling my brain to remember that I'm on a different one it was a bit of a learning curve, but
Yeah.
we're lucky to have it and good learning curve.
Definitely. It's so good that we have all those options, because there are different things that people want from their pump. There will be different things that people need, and yeah, it's so good that we have all the options to choose from, like we do in our country. We're very, very lucky.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions for Elise? Carter, have you got any questions before we let her out of the hot seat?
I've got one question. No, I've got one question. So you've had, before we started, just for the audience, me and Elise were chatting, and you've had type 1 diabetes for 7 years, right?
Yes.
So where does it take us? 2017, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think has changed for your type 1 diabetes in 7 years?
I guess it's more.
How would you see it?
I mean, obviously the obvious one is the technology that's come on so far. And I think because I've been under so many different hospitals in moving house a few times, like I've kind of seen care from different DSNs, and I think the difference in teams who care for you, I think, has been quite standard out for me quite a bit, particularly like around mental health support. I think like some teams have been really, really on it and very much like making you feel like an individual and kind of really checking that you're coping okay with it, and some teams have been quite different and not trying to talk badly about any teams. I know it's
no. I think some people, badly is badly. I think it's important. I think people should understand the variation that exists, and my views are very simple on that. Empathy should not be a negotiable thing, if that makes sense, right? And from your quality of life, what do you think's changed? Do you think 7 years quality of life? That's what I mean. And technology is what it is. But
yeah, and now I think it took 2 years at least for it to kind of for it to kind of sink in, I guess, and especially because I got it when I was 20. How old am I? I think I was 24, 25, something like that. So I am grateful that I didn't have it as a child, but then I guess as an adult, you've had quite a big life before without diabetes. So it took a few years to kind of get used to having it. But now I genuinely don't dislike having it. I think it's opened so many opportunities. I've met so many amazing people and been able to do like really good, positive talking experiences. And at one point I was training my dog to smell my blood sugar changes. So we did like kids talks with the dog, and it's really, really, and it's made me totally appreciate my other working organs and your health, and I think it's not all bad, and I think I've learned to really try and include it in my life as like a positive thing. I have really, really horrendous weeks with it. Obviously everybody does, and there are times where I really don't want it, but it's something you've got for life, and technology is moving in such a fast direction. Who knows? 5 years.
Yeah. So DSN Forum, I think, Elise would be a great candidate for TAD, wouldn't she?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm on mute. I was going to say absolutely, definitely.
To me, Partha's romance, James Norton, that's always benefit, isn't it? So
we'll catch up offline, shall we? We'll have a chat, obviously, depending on pregnancy period and all that sort of stuff. So okay. No, I won't say anything anymore. So thank you for that. It's much appreciated.
No worries. Thank you.
Have you got any questions for any of us before we say thank you?
I don't think so. No, just thank you so much for having me.
No, don't go anywhere because you might get some questions.
Definitely. Q&A
Someone's
in a bit.
asked about loan pumps for pregnancy. I don't know if that's one for you, Partha. I know we certainly don't have loan pumps for pregnancy. So what does happen?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, do you? Someone wants to get pregnant, move to the Ipsomed, and then move to something else. What happens?
Yeah. So the warranty lasts 4 years. So you can use that for 4 years, and you can just keep reallocating it to different people. There is a SOP that Ipso pump, what's the company will give you that you can use, so that you can obviously got to clean it, reset the whole thing, make sure it's safe, make sure it's in good working order, and yeah, you can reuse it. Because the money is in the consumables anyway, isn't it? So switching somebody from an Ipso pump back to an Omnipod, the monthly cost is going to be the same. And if we can use that pump for somebody else that just wants 9 months of Ipso pump, it's not any extra money. It's just the consumables are going to cost pretty similar. So yeah.
Well, there you go then. We can all, so everyone can contact Ipso for that SOP, I guess, to use in their team.
Yeah.
Are you going to jump in, Partha, about the initial funding for pregnancy?
I'm going to go to the next slide so we don't have to watch that roll in.
I'm gonna do that as part of the rollout. So I think this is the sort of crunch of the conversation, and I want everybody to listen carefully what I'm just about to say as to what. So I'm going to distill it down for everybody as to what's happening. As if on cue, Alison Cox has turned up as well, so I'll admit her myself. So here is the thing: there are two groups of people with type 1 diabetes in this country as regards technology. There's group 1 who are on a sensor and an existing pump. Okay, so they've already got something. It's not looped, and all of them, everybody, is eligible now for an upgrade, and that upgrade either is the same cost or costs you less for the system. So there is additional cost for upgrading your system. Okay, does it make it clear? Is that so far so good?
What if you're on like an Omnipod Dash and you want to go onto a Medtronic with the Simplera sensor? There's a cost there.
No, it's not. It altogether, what you're paying for the Omnipod, that's what we have negotiated. If you're going for an Omnipod along with, let's say, they're on an existing L2 sensor, what the systems are paying at the moment, if you do an upgrade to any hybrid closed loop, it will be less or same. Okay.
Even with the initial payout for the pump cost, even with that,
there is no
initial you're thinking
payout.
Like the
4 year, always 4 years.
Okay, we're thinking in 4-year terms. Okay.
Always.
So over 4 years, it will be cost
Correct.
Neutral over 4 years. Yeah. Okay, but you might have to pay a bit out right now for that pump, but in 4 years you will have paid the same.
Yeah. So basically, it's all done in 4-year blocks from the budgets. So 4-year blocks that you've been paying, you now pay actually less. So some of them will be significantly less. So you have some major save, because the expectation is that if you're on a pump, you're on a pump for life unless you choose to come off it. So that's sunk cost in this system. So that's group 1. Anybody who's on a pump and a sensor at the moment is eligible for an upgrade. And that's the conversation we're trying to say to teams: get it done gradually as you go along. Talk to the company; they will do it for you. It's easier. If you've got a host of Medtronic 6, whatever, do it. Tandem, Ipso, whatever you got. Talk to the company, get it upgraded. Okay, that's 1. Then comes a second group, which are people who are only on sensors, which is the vast majority of people, right? So for them, there are that's where the funding comes through. So there's 14.1 million pounds which has been put into the system to be used till the end of March 2025. Give or take, that's close to 500 new patients that needs to go on. These are not upgrades. 500 new patients that needs to go on to new starts. Then the funding for next year then will come through, 25, then 26, then 27, 28. They've all been signed off. So that should see some huge spike in numbers of eligible people. Now, of that numbers that I've said, everybody's got different allocations. Some area will have allocation to 100 patients. Some area will have allocation to 70 patients. And what we are saying to people is to make sure you get to your number so you can get there. If areas go like, oh my God, we can do more, then we need to have a conversation with areas that are doing nothing and because what we don't want to do is just move money around and then make the nothings stay at nothing. Because that causes variation around the country. The aim is in the next 2-3 years that everybody's playing at the same level patch, which has now happened with CGM. So that's the rollout. What you need to find out as a clinician, as a nurse, as a patient, as a carer is, one, how many patients have been allocated to your system? I know it because it's on my laptop. And if you don't know, I am very happy to pass it on. And then you need to know is what is the plan for the system? Are you in that priority group? And priority groups absolutely are children, women trying for pregnancy, etc., etc. Okay. So to the questions coming in, they won't let us upgrade. There is nothing called won't let us upgrade. This is not a, what should I say? I don't know what the analogy is. Birmingham, for example, so Birmingham haven't declared independence from the United Kingdom. So what you need to do is what we are doing is we are engaging them with them one by one. This is the same story that we did with CGM. So nobody's declared independence from the NHS. Okay, all 8 systems. Sorry, I need to read some comment. All 8 systems are available on the NHS. Everything's at a cost-effective range. So there's no issues with doing that. Okay, I'm going to take some questions. Has there been agreement for those of us to upgrade from basic? Yes, there has been. As I said, anybody on any existing pump, the agreement is done. So you need to pick that up. They are not they do not come from the allocated funding. To Anna, as I've said, Birmingham and Solihull haven't declared independence. Please involve your clinician and copy me in. Next, we have a huge number of patients. Does allocation change on that basis? So we know about people moving across different ICSs. There's a communication gone out on the 17th of September to all ICSs how to cross-charge between each other. It doesn't eat onto others' allocation. So that message and that confirmation has also been sent out. Okay. West Midlands are being problematic. Depends as to which part of West Midlands you look at. I would have people saying East England are problematic. Some people go like South London has been problematic. I think when it affects you, it feels problematic. But that's why I exist, to help smooth out the problems. So my request to you all is that when you're having this, email your clinician, copy me in. I will then pick it up and we go from there. So recently we have, for example, we have had meetings. For example, Norwich and Norfolk, for example, was not prescribing anything. And now they're running out in a rush because we have spent about an hour explaining to them what I've just explained to you all, and then we can go from there. Okay. We are aware of the Southwest London issue, Martin. We are going to catch up with them. Again, those are the 2 groups. You have certain money, put people on it, upgrade people who are already on it. It's quite straightforward. And then next year, can you put your email in the chat? car@nhs.net. Everybody, partha.car@nhs.net. Everybody knows my email. It's pretty easy to find. Email, that's fine. Talk to you. So what I would suggest to everybody is to talk to your clinician about what I've just told you. If they're not aware of that knowledge, then copy me in. I'll explain it to them. Then I'll talk to the ICS. I expect this to happen over the next 5-6 months, and we'll resolve it. Don't worry, we'll get there.
I think the issue is it's backdated, isn't it? So the teams have to put the people on pumps, then we do the audit, then we get the money back. So I think hospitals are very reluctant to do that kind of stuff because they're worried probably that they're not going to get the money.
Yeah, so there's 2 or 3 things that people need to understand. There's a reason we backdated the money. We gave people money for young type 2 diabetes. People didn't get it. We top-loaded money for children who had type 2 diabetes, about 14 million pounds of it. Most clinical teams didn't see it because in an NHS struggling for money, that went into black holes or funding other areas. And I don't want to do that with the money I've really literally sweated blood and tears to negotiate from. So this time, what we're saying to everybody, put them on it and you get it every quarter. It's not like you get it at the end of the year. The problem we have is in the data quality that's coming through, which is very, very poor. So that's what we need. So if you're not going to be able to give me data to tell me these are the number of people have started on pumps, and I'm sure none of these people exist in this call, but we have had people to who we have asked, how many people have you started on pumps since April? To which the answers have been, we don't know. And I've said, how is this logically possible? But they don't. The problem is, if you don't know what you have done, we can't pay you. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So one thing we are going to do over the next few months, we are asking everybody. So there is actually a link that I will actually send across to the DSN forum later. These are the data we need from each center. Okay. Number one, the demographic of the person, i.e. sex, age, blah, blah, blah. 2, are they on a CGM? 3, are they on a sensor? That's pretty much what I want to know. I don't need anything else. And I just need to know all the patients under your care every quarter. So that's it. So that's where we are. Norfolk pediatric docent, we can swap to OP5, so they might need time to decide the price. I mean, I think, so that is a local thing. And I think that's fair. And I think this is where I think all the local people so I'll be very honest here. We have taken the step of saying children are priority, 0 to 19. Now, in that 0 to 19, I think that has to be local clinicians and patient groups deciding. Should it be toddlers? I don't know. I'm not a pediatrician. Should it be? So if you ask me, if somebody asks me in the adult world, who should be a priority? I'm going to say something which is going to please some people and upset some people straight away. How about I said it should be women with menopause? Right? I can absolutely tell you what will happen. There's a lot of parents, a lot of people will hang on a second. What about the adolescents going to university?
Yeah.
Or the woman who's going to the menopause is going like, this sounds like delightful news. Partha is one of the best things that's ever happened in the history of time. That's how these things work. So we are looking at what we can do. We have specifically said women trying for pregnancy and pregnant. So just to give an idea as well, what does happen, we have also taken legal challenges because people have challenged the fact that we have made women a priority, evidently breaches the Equality Act. We have had to explain to people that's not how the Equality Act works. Helping women getting better outcomes for their pregnancy doesn't challenge the Equality Act at all. We would have done it for men if they had the ability to get pregnant. They don't, the last time I checked. So it doesn't breach any act. So that's what we do face as we go along. But going back again about the implementation, just think about that. Think about what the priority is, and I think go forward with that. And I make no two bones about the fact that and that is my decision. I'll stand by it till the end of time. That was fully my clinical decision. That should be children and women trying for pregnancy. In year 2, we'll look at it differently.
Yeah, I think that's where some of the problems come, isn't it? Because patients obviously see everyone can have it, and obviously, but that does come with that. It's a 5-year rollout program, and we have been able to prioritise our own people locally. So not everyone will get it in year 1 or even in year 2 or 3 because we are working to list with a set amount of staff.
And I think Beth, one thing that you guys have touched on before, the fact of the matter is we have literally done nothing for women specifically. We haven't. We got poorer outcomes and we haven't. So CGM in pregnancy was the start, and this is where we are. So that's where we are. I think there's a lot of debate to be had. Is that should the next group be 19 to 25? I don't know. Should it? People are very welcome to tell me accordingly, but we'll be taking opinions on that and going forward.
Yeah.
I've just copied a few of the questions from the chat into the Q&A box but if people can use the Q&A box, it's easier to have them all in one place. So we've got, have you answered any of these ones? We have huge numbers of patients, not just from London, but also many of the home. We've done that one.
Yeah.
One of them is, what are your views on continuing preoccupation with HbA1cs when some healthcare professionals emphasise that time in range is so much more useful? So will we go to using time in range over HbA1c, which is always talked about at EASD and all the other ATTD and
so two things. HbA1c will always remain the gold standard till we have enough CGM and rolled out. right? There's no point in talking about time in range in countries which don't even have CGM. Okay, that's number one. So HbA1c, I think clinicians' obsession with it is because it's a new world of understanding. I find time in range fantastic to have conversations with. I think HbA1c comes much later in the conversation with me, number one. Number two, Stacey Walker has put a point. I'm not quite sure there's any media which has said that everyone will get HCL straight away. I haven't seen a single media outlet which has said that. I think every single one of them, I think it depends on people's interpretation of it. So for those who are not aware, I do a full-time clinical job. I do 6 to 7 clinics a week, and of which 3 of them are type 1 diabetes clinics. I look after anybody above the age of 19. I have patients with whom the conversation is very clear. You will get to your closed loop in year 4. 3 to 4 years from now, not now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a Pompey thing because I come from Portsmouth. I haven't met a single adult patient who said to me, that's an absolute outrage. It's not, because most people are on CGM and they're doing all right. So we have said, no, children, once we get past children. So the good news is that if that happens earlier, right, I've told them year 3, year 4, they're delighted. So what we are doing is we're putting them through training, we're building a waiting list, and we have said, we'll get to you, and as it should be. So I always would like to see any media comms which says everybody will get HCL, because first of all, everybody won't, according to present NICE guideline. And I think every single one of them has said it will be over 5 years. And that's the way it would be.
Yeah.
Just, I don't, did you read the one about Norfolk saying they can't get the Omnipod 5 in Norfolk? Is there an issue? Yeah.
Done that.
Okay.
Yeah. Any more questions then? Oh, there are some. We are really short for staff on our pump teams. They have 0.4 whole time equivalent, which is what, 5-10 hours, something like that. For their current workload, they think they need 2.3 whole time equivalents. They're told that it's unlikely that they'll get a business case through for more staffing, which, yeah, we're all in that boat, aren't we? It's just horrendous.
So
they would like some advice on reclaiming money from the ICB, and if there is a guide for blue tech forms.
That's like 3 questions in one. Let's go with the workforce bit first.
So workforce bit is, first of all, is that the question I would have is how much have you utilized the role of industry to help you with your pump starts? I think that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that we expect the second year's funding, which will be much bigger. I think what then needs to happen is a conversation saying, look, for example, if the next year has a area eligible to put 220 people on pumps, what we would like systems to go like, do you know what? I'm not going to use all of the money for HCL. So I'm going to take 20 pumps value and use that for staffing. Okay. That's what we want to do. And that's what we want to encourage people to think about. So the allocative funding for next year will be sent out. And that's what I'm going to encourage all clinical teams to do. Sit around and think about, okay, so if we sliced a little bit of the money out, yes, we'll have a little less pumps, but can we use that for that level of work? Okay. I think the big thing that people will need, if I'm very honest, is probably admin support. I think that's a big thing with data collection, etc. So that's one thing. I think Michelle makes a point. Some people are just desperate for HCL. Yeah, I get it, but you are getting it ahead of the rest of the planet. So I think I always say context, right? It's absolutely important about context. I think, why do you want HCL is the question. We are in a tax-funded system. Do you want it because you're really struggling and you're having high posts left, right, and center where a case can be made? Or do you want it if it will just simply improve your quality of life? If I had type 1, I would want it tomorrow. Unfortunately, again, for every single parent out there, they want it for their kid. And I think that's the conversation will always be about priorities, unfortunately. So it is a difficult conversation, and so do I. As I said, I do a full-time clinical job. I sit down and explain to them. That's where we are in the NHS, and that's what we can do. If you take a step back, and those of you here in this call, I always would like you to think about what is happening with other TAs in diabetes. None of them are being delivered is what is happening. So those of you are aware, there's lots of TAs on obesity drugs, and that is not being given out. There's no money at all. So we are in a fortunate position to have negotiated some money, and I think we need to work our way through the money so we don't waste it. So that's the way we will do it.
Yeah.
So I think we probably can take one last question before we wrap up. So there's one there from Alison. Is that? We've kind of answered that already there, haven't we?
Yeah, bless you. There's one about retinal screening. We would say there is a document been released about the retinal screening, hasn't there, Partha, that Becky Thomas helped with, who's Professor Becky Thomas, who's absolutely amazing. Dr. Becky Thomas, sorry, who's amazing with anything eyes. Do go and have
Queen Becky Thomas. Let's just give her whatever title we can.
Queen of eyes.
Anything to do with eyes. Speak to Becky because she'll talk to you for hours about it. But she has done some stuff, and there's a guidance document about retinopathy with hybrid closed loop and retinal screening, etc., etc. So do go and have a look at that. And Partha, you've just...
and I think in plain simple terms, it's basically a question of a vast majority of people haven't had their eyes screened. Please do have your eyes screened before you're starting your HCL if you haven't had it done in the last 1 year to 2 years. That's a bottom line message to begin with.
Yeah.
And it's been added into that guide, isn't it?
Of keeping, using that as a ransom. You can't have hybrid closed loop unless you've had your eye screening, and then makes us the bad guys.
There's a good reason for that.
Yeah.
We don't want you to go blind.
I think, but I think there's a nuanced conversation. So let me give you my personal experience. I had a person who refused to have their eyes screened. And I said, okay, that's fine. I want you to write it down for me on a piece of paper about the risks you accepted. Because if something happens, I think it needs to be an informed choice. So I think there is a bit of a balance there as to where we sort of do it. I think I just want to touch a little bit about the challenges and solutions before I know we're nearly there, is to say that I think year 1 will be, as we said, just to a certain number. Year 2, I think, will be bumpy till it settles down in month 6. And I think the whole system will see huge uptick of numbers, I suspect, in 2026 is what I would expect to happen. I think children will be covered by 2025, as mentioned. I think it will get to 85 to 90%. Pregnancy will be covered by next year simply because it's got Helen Murphy and Eleanor Scott on it, and they are. My God. Okay, they are something, but they will do it. And that's the passion we want. And Elise makes a fantastic point about it. Is the balance for Layla? You can't say that without coming to Portsmouth. I mean, how could you? I can't believe that. So I think it's important that we recognize that where we are going. So that's the importance of the message, I would say.
Thank you, Partha. So we're just about out of time. Thank you so much to everybody for coming. Thank you to all of our speakers for joining us. Thank you again to Abbott for sponsoring. And please, can I ask you to do this one thing? If you can scan the QR code, we will also put the link in our forum for you to go to a feedback form, because these webinars don't happen just by magic. We need your feedback to see, what kind of things you want next, what kind of things you like, what kind of things you don't like, all that kind of stuff. So please do fill out the feedback form. It's really, really valuable to us. And thank you very much to everybody for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.